Well, I mean, I think it was clear that 2020 served as the official coming out party for industrial and logistics. I mean, this obviously for the years prior to 2020, things have been growing, and there was a lot of interest in industrial and logistics. But I think the pandemic accelerated a lot of the trends that we saw heading into COVID-19, and we've really taken that next step forward in terms of the activity, both in terms of development on the occupier side and on the investment side. I mean, if you look at 2020 within Central Europe from an investment perspective, there was 3.27 billion traded over that year, which is a 50% increase from 2019. So some pretty staggering growth numbers in terms of the total volume. And also we saw, whereas other asset classes yields were decompressing potentially off the back of the pandemic, it was the opposite reaction in industrial and logistics, where you saw yields really coming in rather than out, which I think is just a testament to both the demand and also the supply. We did a survey at the end of December, Colliers did, on a global basis, where we were surveying investors in terms of what they were expecting for the year forward. And when it came to European investors, if you add up the investors that were looking at industrial and those that were also looking at data centers, it was the most in-demand asset class, even more so than office. And I suspect that's the first time that's happened since we've been tracking this type of information, where you see really logistics stepping to the forefront and being the most kind of in demand in terms of an asset class. So clearly there's a lot of capital continuing to shift from other asset classes, and we're also seeing on a global basis capital shifting from other investment types, whether it's equities, bonds, infrastructure, etc., into real estate. So it's almost the doubling down of this effect when it comes to industrial and logistics. Looking at Central and Eastern Europe, I think one of the very noticeable trends is this continues to be the most international investment class, even more so than offices now. When you're looking at the top 5 investors in terms of the last, say, 5-10 years, 4 out of the top 5 are actually not European based, they're Asian. When you're looking at the top 10, there's only 2 European based investors in the top 10 in terms of their investments into industrial and logistics. So it clearly speaks to the fact that this has become a very diverse investment segment within Central and Eastern Europe. And I think that's a great thing, because for us, whether you're a developer, an investor, a leasing agent, etc., that type of breadth of capital coming into the market can only be viewed positively. The occupier side during 2020, again, very positive. We saw double-digit demand growth in every market across kind of the Central European 6. Poland, we saw 22% demand growth, Czech Republic 15%, Romania, a staggering 72% growth in terms of occupier demand. So it's really a situation, even though I know all the developers on the call here are busy building as fast as they can, it's tough to keep up with the demand at the moment in most of kind of the core markets across Central and Eastern Europe. So for us, we see it to continue. We think 2021 will be another strong year, and going onwards, what we're starting to look more at is kind of the makeup on the occupier side, country by country, because it's very clear that whether you're looking at Poland or Slovakia or Romania or Czech, that the makeup of who's actually filling the spaces is very different. If you look at Poland, it's probably the most mature market. You've got the most diversification in terms of the occupiers, whether it's 3PLs or retailers or e-commerce, etc. It's fairly well spread out. Whereas if you go to some of the other countries, Slovakia is dominated by the automotive sector. So there's questions around what will happen there. Czech Republic, much more a 3PL market compared to some of the other markets. And Romania still much more focused on the FMCG sector. So while we kind of get thrown into one basket being Central Europe, it's hard to say that the markets are similar when you break it down in terms of the occupiers and the trends. And I think part of it is geographic and the location, part of it's the maturity of the economies. But it does seem that country by country, it has to be looked at very differently.